She had the face that could stop a crowd. High cheekbones carved by heritage, eyes like dark silk, a smile that could melt the coldest critic. Hollywood adored her, so long as she stayed in the shadows. She could command the screen in ways that made the audience forget to breathe, yet the roles she was given were never hers to truly own. In a world built on illusions, she was both the dream and the exile. They called her exotic, mysterious, dangerous. But never enough to let her play the heroine in her own story. And when Hollywood finally made a movie about a Chinese woman's struggle, the role went to a white actress in makeup. Anna May Wong smiled for the cameras, but inside, she knew the truth. This is the untold story of Anna May Wong. She entered Hollywood like a flash of silver light in a city obsessed with gold. Born Wong Lu Tsang in 1905 in Los Angeles' Chinatown. She was a second-generation Chinese American at a time when the city itself was still finding its identity. To the world, she would become Anna May Wong, the name that rolled off the tongues of casting directors, gossip columnists, and international fans alike. When she first stepped onto a set at age 14 as an extra in The Red Lantern, 1919, the camera loved her. By her late teens, she had already stolen scenes in films like Bits of Life and The Toll of the Sea, 1922, one of the earliest color productions. The public saw her as a rare jewel, the exotic beauty from the Orient. The Dragon Lady, the Lotus Blossom. In the eyes of the press, she was the embodiment of mystery, a perfect blend of grace and danger. Magazines gushed over her elegance. The way she carried herself like a royal figure from some ancient dynasty, yet dressed in the latest Paris fashions. Photographers adored her sharp bob haircut. A modernist rebellion softened by her delicate features. On red carpets and in publicity stills, she was poised, untouchable, a figure sculpted for the silver screen. But the roles she was offered told a different story. In The Thief of Baghdad, 1924, she was the scheming Mongol slave. In Daughter of the Dragon, 1931, she was the calculating femme fatale. Even when she played sympathetic characters, they were often bound to tragic endings, a reflection of Hollywood's racial restrictions, not her talent. At the time, effectively shutting her out from playing the lead in most mainstream productions. Still, Anna May Wong learned to use the press to her advantage. She gave witty, sharp-tongued interviews that hinted at her frustration without alienating the powerful studio bosses. "Why is it that the screen Chinese is nearly always the villain?" she once asked. Her fame crossed oceans. In Berlin, Paris, and London, she was welcomed as a true star, a cosmopolitan artist who could hold her own alongside Marlene Dietrich and Leni Riefenstahl. She performed cabaret acts in smoky European clubs, wearing shimmering gowns and speaking multiple languages. In those moments, away from Hollywood's narrow gaze, she could be the leading lady she was never allowed to be in America. For the public, Anna May Wong was a paradox. Both the most famous Chinese-American actress in the world and a constant reminder of the barriers she could not break. Her image was everywhere: film posters, cigarette cards, fan magazines, yet her voice was often muted by scripts that turned her into a symbol rather than a person. On the surface, she was the perfect Hollywood success story. A young girl from Chinatown who rose to international fame, a style icon with legions of admirers. But the camera could never capture the whole truth. Beneath the elegance, there was a quiet ache, the knowledge that no matter how brightly she shone, the roles she most deserved were always just out of reach. Long before the bright lights of Hollywood called her name, Anna May Wong's world was a narrow stretch of streets and alleys in Los Angeles' old Chinatown. Born Wong Lu Tsang on January 3, 1905. She was the second of 7 children in a family that straddled 2 worlds. Her father, a second-generation Chinese-American, ran a modest laundry business. Her mother tended to the children, speaking little English. Life in Chinatown was a constant negotiation between heritage and survival. On one side were the deep traditions her family tried to preserve, ancestral altars, community festivals, the cadence of Cantonese in the air. On the other side loomed the growing hostility of early 20th century America, where the Chinese Exclusion Act was still law. And racism wasn't whispered, it was shouted. Anna May grew up watching her parents treated as outsiders in the city where they were born. School was no refuge. Children mocked her almond-shaped eyes, her lunch of rice and vegetables, her name. Some teachers assumed she was less capable simply because of her heritage. Yet even as a child, she developed a stubborn pride. She was skipping classes to watch silent films being shot on the streets of Los Angeles. Standing behind the ropes, she studied every movement of the actors, memorizing the way they held themselves, the drama in their eyes. She didn't just want to watch, she wanted to be on that screen. But that dream came with its own obstacles. For a Chinese-American girl in the 1910s, acting wasn't just unconventional, it was scandalous. Her parents disapproved, worried that the profession was disreputable and morally dangerous. In their eyes, a respectable daughter didn't spend her days painted in makeup, pretending to be someone else. Still, Anna May's will was unshakable. She took on odd jobs and begged film crews for background work, sometimes waiting hours just to be seen. Her first big break, at 14, was as an uncredited extra in The Red Lantern, 1919. She played one of dozens of Chinese maidens, her face appearing for only seconds. But those seconds lit a fire in her. When the film came out, she dragged her friends to see it, pointing to the screen at the fleeting image of herself. She heard the whispers on set, directors joking about at the Orient, costume designers draping her in fabrics they claimed looked more Chinese, even when they were wrong. At home, the tension with her family grew. They worried her pursuit of acting would bring shame, she worried staying in Chinatown would suffocate her dreams. A turning point came when she was 17 and cast in The Toll of the Sea, 1922, one of the first Technicolor films. It should have been a triumph, a rare leading role for an Asian actress. But even that victory was bittersweet. The story ended with her character drowning herself, a melodramatic sacrifice that fit Hollywood's appetite for tragic, Oriental tales. Anna May performed it with grace, but privately, she bristled. She wanted stories where women like her could live, love, and be complex, not just noble martyrs or sinister villains. Behind every elegant photograph from this era was a young woman navigating the isolation of being the first. She had no mentors in the industry who looked like her, no roadmap to follow. Every step forward felt like walking on a tightrope, balancing the desire to represent her heritage with the pressure to mold herself into whatever Hollywood wanted. And in those quiet moments, when the cameras stopped and the makeup came off, she wondered if the cost of chasing her dream would be losing the very self she was fighting to show the world. If Hollywood wouldn't give her a place, Anna May Wong decided she would carve one herself, even if it meant rewriting who she was in the public eye. By the mid-1920s, she understood that talent alone could not break the invisible barriers of race and gender in the studio system. She needed to become an event, someone whose image was so captivating, so singular, that the industry could not ignore her. She shed Wong Lu Tsang and fully embraced Anna May Wong, a name that fit neatly into marquees and press columns. She cultivated a style that was both rooted in tradition and defiantly modern. Her sleek cheongsams, high-collared, body-skimming dresses in shimmering silks, became her trademark, signaling an Oriental mystique to Western audiences while allowing her to reclaim Chinese fashion on her own terms. She mixed them with Paris couture and Art Deco jewelry, crafting a visual identity that was neither wholly Chinese nor entirely Western, but unmistakably hers. On screen, she learned to weaponize the roles she was given. If Hollywood insisted she play the femme fatale, she would make her dangerous characters elegant and layered, hinting at inner lives the scripts ignored. if they gave her a tragic ending. She would infuse it with dignity and sorrow so deep it outshone the film's shallow stereotypes. This was her silent rebellion, turning cardboard cutouts into living, breathing women. Yet the American system remained stubborn. In 1930, when Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer announced a lavish adaptation of The Good Earth, a story about Chinese farmers, Anna May saw an opportunity. It could have been her defining role, a chance to portray a fully human Chinese heroine to American audiences. Instead, MGM cast white actress Louise Rayner in yellowface for the lead. Citing anti-miscegenation rules that prohibited her from acting opposite the white male lead in a romantic storyline. The rejection was a public humiliation. A brutal reminder that she was welcome in Hollywood only as a supporting spectacle. So she left. Europe became her stage, and there, the reinvention blossomed into full transformation. In London, she starred in Piccadilly, 1929, playing a nightclub dancer whose allure and vulnerability made her a sensation. The British press hailed her as the world's most beautiful Chinese woman, a backhanded compliment that nevertheless opened doors. In Germany, she appeared in Flame of Love, 1930. Her time in Europe also brought her into contact with directors and writers who treated her as a collaborator rather than an ornament. She experimented with stage acting, live performance, and even cabaret singing, expanding her artistry beyond the silver screen. Each appearance was meticulously curated, dramatic lighting, sculptural poses, costumes that turned her into a living painting. By controlling her image, she began to control her narrative. But reinvention came at a cost. She was often far from home, alienated from her family, and moving in circles where she was still exoticized, just more respectfully. She longed to prove herself in America, to claim the roles that should have been hers from the start. In 1935, she traveled to China for the first time, hoping to reconnect with her roots and perhaps find new creative possibilities. The trip was complicated. Some in China criticized her for the shameful roles she had played, accusing her of pandering to Western fantasies. She defended herself fiercely, pointing out that she had worked within the limits imposed on her, and had fought to elevate those roles from within. Returning to the U.S., she remained a paradox, internationally celebrated, yet domestically sidelined. But Anna May Wong had learned by then that survival in Hollywood was not about waiting for permission, it was about mastering the art of becoming who the world didn't yet know it needed. By the late 1930s, Anna May Wong had achieved what no other Asian American performer of her time could. She was a household name on 2 continents. Her image appeared in fan magazines from London to Shanghai, her films played in packed cinemas from Paris to Hong Kong, and she was invited to dine with aristocrats, diplomats, and movie moguls. For a brief moment, it seemed she had reached the summit, a living emblem of East meeting West. Her return to Hollywood brought renewed visibility. In Daughter of Shanghai, 1937, and King of Chinatown, 1939, she played women of courage and intelligence, characters who drove the plot rather than existing as exotic decoration. Audiences, especially from immigrant communities, embraced these portrayals as rare glimpses of dignity in a sea of stereotypes. She also broke ground on radio, using her voice, rich, measured, and unmistakable, to reach Americans who might never have seen one of her films. But even at her peak, the constraints never loosened. Studios still hedged when it came to casting her in mainstream romantic leads. Major film productions involving Asian characters often went to white actors in makeup. Her agents fought for better roles, but the offers were always a careful balancing act between what Anna May wanted and what Hollywood was willing to allow. Her personal life sacrificed to the demands of a career that never quite gave back what it took. Close friends described her as witty and sociable in public, yet guarded, even melancholic, in private. She never married, and in interviews, she hinted that the scrutiny and prejudice surrounding interracial relationships made intimacy complicated, if not impossible. The political climate added more weight. As World War II loomed, anti-Asian sentiment in America shifted focus from Chinese to Japanese targets, but suspicion and ignorance remained constant. Anna May threw herself into war relief efforts for China, raising funds and awareness for the suffering in her ancestral homeland. She toured with the USO, performed for troops, and made public appeals for unity, acts that were patriotic, but also deeply personal. Physically, the toll began to show. Years of grueling schedules, transcontinental travel, and the emotional strain of navigating a career in hostile territory wore her down. She developed health problems, including chronic stress and liver issues. Alcohol became a quiet companion. Combined with the studio system's resistance to casting her in anything outside the narrow, Oriental type, pushed her further to the margins. She found occasional work on stage and television. But the grand roles that could have defined her legacy were never offered. The red carpet still glowed when she appeared, the cameras still flashed, but the energy was different. She was no longer the fresh sensation, she was a relic of a system that had used her image and denied her fulfillment. And yet, she never completely disappeared. Even as her career slowed, she remained a cultural figure, a living reminder of Hollywood's complicated relationship with race and representation. The paradox was clear. Anna May Wong had climbed higher than anyone of her background before her, but the view from the top was a lonely, costly one. In the final years of her life, Anna May Wong carried herself with the same poise that had defined her on screen, even as the spotlight dimmed. By the mid-1950s, she made a quiet but significant breakthrough on television with The Gallery of Madame Lutsong, the first U.S. series to star an Asian American lead. It was a brief run, but it planted a seed for future generations. Still, her health was failing. Years of professional strain and personal solitude had left her body fragile. In 1961, she was preparing for a role in Flower Drum Song, one of the rare Hollywood musicals featuring a largely Asian cast, when illness forced her to withdraw. On February 3, 1961, just days after her 56th birthday, Anna May Wong died of a heart attack in her Santa Monica home. There was no grand farewell. No Hollywood tribute, only a small service attended by family and close friends. For decades, her legacy was overshadowed by the very industry she had fought to change. Yet in recent years, Anna May Wong didn't vanish. She became a voice, a warning, and a promise, in Hollywood's long, unfinished conversation about who gets to be seen.